So the second drawing session deals with different forms, fruit and paper bag. So I have these set up and I have my direct light source, and notice how the shadow changes direction as I move the light source around. Another thing to note, and I'll bring the light a little closer, is that on the spheres, especially the oranges, we can understand the direct light source as it is coming straight down and hitting against the surface. And then as the surface turns away from the light source, we get into the shadow area. And of course there's a cast shadow that is caused by the blocking of the light by the form, and that cast shadow is on the surface is flat, and therefore the shadow is reflecting the surface, but also the shape of the form that's casting it. The other peculiar thing is this lightening. If you'll notice that the area right under here is lightened, and that is because of the light hitting this surface and bouncing back up into the shadow and lightening it. So we have the form shadow, we have the core, the darkest part of the shadow right there, and then the reflected light is lightening the shadow and helping to give the sense of depth. And then, of course, the cast shadow. And the cast shadow has somewhat fuzzy edges. If I move this piece of fruit, the shadow gets fuzzier. And the fuzzy edges, again, are because the light is bouncing into the shadow a little bit. And so light's hitting the surface, bouncing into the shadow area, and bouncing back down, and it's kind of playing a ping pong game. Okay, so now I have my bag set up and the fruit in front of it, and the point of view that I'm working at is going to be different than what you're actually seeing on the camera. But so I'll be drawing from my point of view, and you'll be looking at the forms from that point of view. So your angle will be different. So the first thing I want to do is lay in just very gesturally the forms. And so I'm going to just quickly indicate where those pieces of fruit are going to be sitting. I'm also going to indicate the cast shadow a little bit. And then I'm just going to lightly indicate, and this is all gesture, lightly indicate the bag, and drawing through so that I understand where the bag corner is that I can't see behind the orange. So here's the orange, and here's the one on the left. The stem area is right up in here. Here's the back edge of the bag. And so this is just laid in very lightly, and I'm going to lay in a background. And the idea of this is to kind of get rid of the contour. Even though I've started with a gesture, I want to not keep it a linear drawing, but I want to actually create a volumetric illusion. And so that is going to involve getting rid of the sense of the contour outline. So I'm actually going to start doing that, kind of going into the structure of the bag here. And it's got all sorts of folds, so these things are really interesting to draw. And I'm looking at that area right there, and I'll be looking at this next. Just keep taking that straight up to the back side. And that's going to give me the basic idea of that shadow area versus the lighter area, and then this triangle down here, which is the lightest. I'm going to use the side of my pencil because it covers more area, and I can lay in tone quickly. And then for refinements, I'm going to go in with the tip of the pencil. And for this, in case you're wondering, those of you who are tool-minded, I am using a black Prismacolor, mainly because it's better for the video. It's going to be a little more dark, a little more obvious, and it has less sheen to it than graphite, so you should be able to see this better. Okay, so I'm bringing the tone right up against the curvature of the orange on the right. I'm going to detail that contour right there. It's got a little bit of a pinch. Then I'm going to go on up with to describe this edge. And there's a little bit of cast shadow going, well, it's more like that direction. So by darkening this area, which is actually the surface over here, I'm allowing the bag form to come forward a little bit. And I'm not using contour anymore because I have forced the edge to be an edge, not because of contour line, but because of change in light and dark. I'm looking for subtle variations in the shadows right over in here to bring some character and personality to that bag. And as you can see, I'm still using the side of my pencil mostly. And right now I'm just continuing to develop the shadow. There's a real thin linear cast shadow right underneath the bag. So I'll again go to find that edge, playing around with the line quality a little bit, but then I'm also going to force that edge somewhat back to the cutoff point back here. And then there's this from my point of view, on the front of this, there is a lighter area and then a darker area. So I'm going to work the darker area to cause the lighter area to happen. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to force the edge of the orange to come forward. Okay, so I've developed that just a little more, and what I'm going to do now is start working on the shadow of the orange and just lightly lay it in. And rather than working around the form, I'm actually working kind of in the same direction in terms of the strokes. That's just what I do. Okay, I've developed this a little further and am now starting to work on the fruit and starting to lay in the shadow, which is going to help create the sense of volume within the form. And I'm going to lay in the entire overall shadow shape, and I'll do the same thing with this one. And just very lightly define the boundary and then come back in with the tonality. Adjusting the shape of the fruit a little bit. And then refining the shadow. And I already pointed out the core of the shadow and the area of reflected light. Generally, that area of reflected light will not be as light as the area where the light is hitting directly. So it has to be understood as being in shadow. And so I'm giving that some tonality in the drawing. And so basically I have a light and a shadow area. And that essentially defines the fruit. But I want to build it out more because it still has a certain degree of flatness to it. So I'm going to build up that tone in the core area. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this using the side of my pencil. And I might even exaggerate the darkness of that core shadow just to help bring it forward a little more. And I want to ease the core shadow into that transition area where the light and the dark kind of meet, the light and the shadow meet. And now I'm going to go back in and define the cast shadow. And kind of complete the entire shadow shape there. So now you can see I have reiterated what is the actuality here. I have the direct light area, I have the core shadow within the entirety of the shadow, I have the area of reflected light, which is the lightening right down here, and then I have the cast shadow. Okay, so now I've developed this a little more. I have added some detailing to the stem area and to the puckering that happens up here around the stem. And I'm refining the back contour, the far contour of the orange a little bit. I have darkened some of the bag, that little triangular area back there, to help bring the orange forward. And help reduce the appearance of the original contour. So I force this edge so that the main issue that brings the orange forward is not a contour line, but is a change in color, this being darker, this being lighter. Going to force this edge to make the separation between the fruit and the bag. So I'll darken the bag behind it a little bit. And then start delineating the core shadow on this. And the cast shadow, again drawing through to where it comes out kind of the other side where it exits. I'm going to refine that contour edge a little more. And again, it's the change in color that is going to define the form. And the contour lines are basically disappearing as we darken the color. And these same principles of light logic apply no matter what you're drawing. They apply to everything dealing with light and shadow. So whether you're doing a portrait, whether you're drawing your pet, whether you're doing architectural renderings, or something out of your own imagination, like character design or set design, the ideas are all the same. You're going to bring reality to anything with an understanding and application of light logic.